bullying isn't nice when you're a victim of bullying, but that's just one of those things in life you have to get over, and you're going to have to cope with it. Who wants a mayor of Greater Manchester? No one asked for it. Nobody voted for it. Let's stop waiting for a messiah who's perfect, because they're not going to come. We've got to take people, warts and all, and expect mistakes, but forgive them if they then save the country.
Well, hello, and a very warm welcome back to the Andrew Eborn Show with me, Andrew Eborn. And today I'm delighted to be joined yet again by Nick Buckley, who is a man of so many hats. He should have that hat factory. Social campaigner, former independent mayoral candidate for Greater Manchester, and now a prominent voice in Reform UK. Nick's journey from the award-winning charity All for One in Manchester to stepping into the political arena has been nothing short of inspiring. He's known for his no-nonsense approach to tackling social issues and his commitment to common sense politics, rather like Anne Widdecombe. Everybody's peddling common sense these days. He's here. He's here to share his story and weigh in on the big topic shaking up Britain in 2025. Nick, it's a pleasure to have you back on the show.
Thank you for the invite. It's great to see the pulse back and growing.
I love it. Every day, that's what you have to do. You have to check the pulse. Now, you grew up. I want to have a look at you, the man. They always sort of say, give me a man until the age of 7. Give me a child to the age of 7, and I'll show you the man. I mean, you grew up in Manchester. Tell me about your early days.
Nothing special. My early days. Poverty, single-parent household. I went to a failing school. Had no positive male role models in my life. I was brought up in a house full of women. It was a happy childhood, but I look back now and I can see the deprivation. I can see where mistakes were made with my upbringing, and if they'd been corrected and I would have had a slightly different upbringing, I probably could have been Prime Minister. I could have been further on in the career. I could have been a more rounded, better person than I am today. But no one has a perfect start in life. And as always, I just try to make the best of the hand that's been dealt me.
Well, you founded All for One to help vulnerable people. Everything.
Okay. Can I just jump in there? The charity was called the Mancunian Way.
Oh, where does All for One come from then?
I've never heard of that before.
How extraordinary. You see, that what I love about this age of sort of misinformation and disinformation, it obviously got to report it in somewhere. Sack the researchers. What's the proper name of it?
Mancunian Way.
That sounds even better. Mancunian Way, which is All for One. Maybe that's what they meant. Or the A41. One of those makes sense. Mancunian Way. But the good thing is the cause. I mean, the name is one thing, but everything from homelessness to youth crime. What experiences in your early life drove you to dedicate yourself to that kind of work? You talked about, obviously, growing up in poverty. You talked about your family circumstances. What other experiences?
I think one of the biggest things in my life was I had a speech impediment up to being about 13. If you can believe it or not, I used to have a really bad stutter. I would be going, hello, Andrew, thank you for inviting me on this show. It's hard to believe that's how I used to speak. And I grew out of it. About 12, 13, I stopped stuttering. When you stutter and you come from a council estate in Manchester and go to a failing school, you either learn to fight, which I didn't, you learn to be a victim, which I refused, or you learn to take the mickey out of yourself. And if you take the mickey out of yourself, you take power away from the bullies and everybody else. And that's how I coped with my affliction. And then from there, watching TV and war movies, and that's where I probably got my education from, was from TV in the 70s, which is hard to believe. And I realized that I wasn't a victim. I knew I wasn't a victim. I just knew that other people spoke better than me. But some of those of my friends didn't come from loving households. I came from a loving household, so I gained there. And I always realized I could be successful. I just didn't know what that meant, and I didn't know how to train myself to work hard and be committed. The best way to describe it is I always thought somebody would knock on my door and offer me the opportunities I deserved. And guess what? No one ever knocked on my door. And I got to about 30 years old. And that's when I decided this isn't working out. And that's when I buckled down and I got a proper job. And that was probably when things changed in my life. And that's when I realized personal responsibility and working hard pays dividends. Doesn't mean you're going to be a millionaire, but you can be successful. But
Yeah,
the best thing is,
I always say the best way of guaranteeing you'll be a millionaire is to start out as a multimillionaire.
yeah, absolutely. And then I fell into social work. I got a job with Manchester Council, and then I fell into working with kids, stopped them getting involved in crime and antisocial behaviour. And straight away I realised, God, I'm good at this. And the reason why I'm good at this is because I was one of those kids. I came from those streets. And my colleagues tended to be southern, white, educated women who were trying to work with northern kids, mainly boys off housing estates, and couldn't relate to them, didn't know anything about their lives. And straight away, I'm saying to these kids, don't lie to me. That's BS, mate. Don't make excuses. It's not because you live in a single parent household. So did I. It's not because of this. It's not. And I started pulling them up on their lies and their excuses, because their lies and excuses were damaging them, and I could see it damaging them. And then I was promoted, and then I was made redundant when the cuts came from the Tory government. And then I set up a multi-award winning charity to carry on that work, that face-to-face work, mainly on the streets, to help people, to support people, to be the citizens we know they can be.
Yeah, and it's fascinating. I know a number of people who started life with stuttering. I mean, very, very famously, those in the entertainment industry, people like Gareth Gates, who found out that if he sang, that actually he could do incredibly well. But actually, when you spoke to people, it caused those sort of issues. How did you get over your stutter?
I grew out of it. That's your explanation. I grew out of it.
And it was that simple. One day, or eventually over a period of time.
Yeah, yeah. By the time I got to secondary school, about 11, 12, it started diminishing then. And I remember being 12 or 13, stood up in class doing a presentation, and I sat down, and my two friends next to me went, Nick, that's the first time you've spoken in class and never stuttered. And I remember them saying that to me, and I was about 13 at the time.
Amazing. What were the name of the friends?
Adrian Gregory and Christopher House.
Are you still in touch?
I see him every decade or something. Life gets in the way.
Okay, keep going, work on that sort of basis. But people. I mean, you talk about being bullied, and I always want to call this out because this has such horrendous effects on people's lives, where people bully people who are different, and what they don't realise is the devastating effect. It wasn't just during your school time, but for the rest of your life. What's your message to those bullies?
I think this is blown out of all proportion. Children always bully, adults always bully. We're not going to get rid of bullying. Concentrating on getting rid of bullying is why we live in an over-feminized society. That's where the woke have come from. That's why everything's failing, because we've got to be nice. We've got to be inclusive. We've got to give everybody group hugs. And the answer is no. Bullying isn't nice when you're a victim of bullying, but that's just one of those things in life you have to get over. And you're going to have to cope with it, because if you allow yourself to be bullied as a child, you're bullied as an adult. They've done studies on this. It's not everyone doesn't suffer from bullying. Bullies see something in those individuals and then bully them, and adults do exactly the same. If you're bullied as a child, you're more likely to be bullied as an adult. We need to make people tougher. We need to give them the strength. We need to give them the coping mechanisms on how to deal with nasty things in life, because trying to get rid of nasty things in life is a panacea. It will never happen.
Okay, I mean it's quite depressing in a way, isn't it? As you say, you can't necessarily change all of that. I always tell everybody that life is not as good. There's an appropriate word. Depending on what time we're being broadcast. It's how you deal with it effectively.
Absolutely. One child might get bullied, but another child might grow up with no legs. Another child might go home and find their father's killed himself. One child might go home and realise his mum's an alcoholic, drug addict, prostitute. So there's always issues in life, And we can't solve those issues, and we're never going to solve all those issues. We need to give people and children the strength to overcome. That's what we need to do, overcome. But at the moment, we've politicized and we've made it trendy to be a victim. How many people do you now know who introduce themselves, and as they're introducing themselves, they tell you all their mental disorders? I don't want to know your mental disorders. I don't want to know.
You're right, Nick, and I think whilst I disapprove greatly of labels and people sort of try and fit within those labels because that's a sort of ticking the box. But things such as autism, which we've got more and more awareness of, I think at the same time there is a balance. You're right. Let's toughen up, but let's at least also address being better to each other as a community. That's got to be worthwhile, isn't it?
Of course. And haven't we always been trying to do that through the history of mankind? Haven't we always tried to improve society and improve the way we treat each other? That's what most religions are also about. But we've got to a stage now where we think we can solve the human condition with a group hug by being pink and fluffy. And that's setting everybody up to fail. I'd rather be armed. I would rather have a suit of armor on me, and then I don't have to worry about the slings and arrows from somebody else.
Okay, those slings and arrows of outrageous fortune. You're sounding very poetic here, Nick. We're going to take a little break. When we come back, we're going to be deep diving more into Nick Buckley, his views on life, the universe, and everything else. You're watching The Andrew Eborn Show. Do not touch that dial. Well, welcome back to The Andrew Eborn Show with me, Andrew Eborn, and my very special guest, Nick Buckley. Now, Nick, you've spoken about how your time on the front lines of social issues shaped your worldview. What's one moment from those years that still sticks with you and influences your politics today?
From my professional career or my childhood career? Or
Both.
From my childhood, it would have to be at one point sharing a bedroom with my granddad, who was a petty officer in the Royal Navy during World War II. And it was late at night, listening to his stories, asking him questions, him telling me about him eating snake in China, his ship going down in shark-infested waters with a Japanese sunk it. And it was hearing those stories and wanting to go travelling and wanting to have my own adventures and have my own life. That made me, and you can see behind me, I have trinkets from around the world. I've been backpacking around the world several times, spent 6 months at a time traveling. So I did what I wanted to do, I got my own stories. That hardened me and that turned me to the man I am today. Because when you're in India and you see real poverty, and then you say to yourself, life's not fair, my benefits won't pay for anything. You go, my benefits won't pay for anything. I remember that family in Delhi living in cardboard boxes on the streets with babies. And I'm complaining about our benefit system. It puts life into perspective. And then my career, I think it would have to be working for the council, working for Manchester Council. The good bit and the bad bit. The good bit was working for Manchester Council, showing me that you can improve your community, your neighbourhood, you can improve people's lives, and people are paid to improve other people's lives, and that's great. The downside of working for the council is you see the waste and the incompetence, mainly the incompetence, and you're working within a system that doesn't recognise that the people are individuals, that the people are people. They're seen as numbers. They're seen as problems. And that's a big part of our politics. We have so many politicians who look at the people and go, you're the problem. And you're a problem to me. You're a problem to society. And that's why we don't solve any problems, because we're not trying to solve problems. We're trying to solve people. And these people are not the problem.
Yeah. Now, running as an independent for Mayor of Greater Manchester in 2021, you took on the big parties. You earned a lot of respect and actually over 20,000 votes. What was the biggest lesson you took away from that campaign?
So, yeah, I got over 50,000 votes. So you need to sack your researcher.
I won't blame them. So blame me. But lies, damn lies, and statistics. I think that's. Yeah. But your work on the basis that you must have counted them a couple of times.
Yeah. I wanted to stand. I wanted to make a stance. I went into the race hoping I'd win. But then, towards the end of the race, we all knew Andy Burnham had won the race hands down again. But I came third. I beat the Greens, I beat the Lib Dems, and I beat Reform UK.
There you go.
I was a one-man band. I funded the campaign myself, and I worked on it full time for 15 months. And I came a decent third. I felt I had to do something. I felt that we all know this country is dying, and I'm sick of talking about our problems, and I'm sick of complaining. And the only way we're going to solve this problem, I think, is if we get a different class of people in Parliament into positions of power. And I think I could do a good job. Obviously, people in Greater Manchester preferred Andy Burnham, which is absolutely fine. But there's no point highlighting our problems all the time if the people highlighting them are not willing to roll their sleeves up, get their hands dirty, and do something about it. And that's why I'm still in politics now. I'm still trying to be elected. If I can get my hands on some levers of power, I know I can make change. And I know the change we need doesn't even cost a lot of money.
Yeah. And I think that's the key, isn't it? I mean, the people talk about change all the time. Actually, the change they really want is the change in their pockets. So you look at that sort of side. We'll come on to the economy in a bit. And to be fair, for the researchers, over 20,000 votes, well, 50,000 is over. So we'll let them have that. What was the biggest difference when you're running up against Andy, who's quite a phenomenal force in and of himself? What were the biggest differences, and why would you have been better?
The differences would have been he had a fully funded professional team around him, fantastic PR, involved in everything, social media. He'd spent years planning for the next election. Money wasn't a problem. So his campaign was slick. He also knew that if he didn't make a mistake, he'd already won hands down. So he didn't have to take any chances. He didn't have to talk about policies. He just had to say as little as possible and make no mistakes. I was the complete opposite. I wasn't even invited to most of the hustings. I was the only candidate not invited to the BBC, to ITV, to Manchester Evening News. And the answer was, you're not a proper candidate. You're only an independent. And I was the only candidate not invited. So I had the cards stacked against me then, and I was a nobody with no chance of winning. And the establishment still didn't want me to have a voice. What would I have done differently? The first thing, everything I said I was going to do didn't rely on anybody else, because I knew nobody was going to help me if I became mayor of Greater Manchester. The government weren't going to help me. The councils weren't going to help me. The establishment were all going to be against me. So everything I said I was going to do, I knew I could do by myself in that position of power. So I was going to tackle some of the big issues. I was going to mess around with some of the fluffy issues, but the issues that matter. So let's talk about knife crime. We've got an epidemic across the UK with knife crime. And the reason why we don't tackle it is because the people who tackle it will be called racist. Because most of the people carrying knives are black, and most of the victims of knife crime are black. Nobody wants to admit that, and nobody wants to tackle it because you will be called a racist. I was going to hold mini referendums in every neighbourhood across Greater Manchester with a knife crime problem. And I was going to get the people of the area to decide if you want more stop and search. And if you vote for more stop and search off the police, you get it and your children are safer. In which case, when the police are complained about for being racist, the answer is no. The people of this neighbourhood voted for more stop and search. And if the people don't vote for more stop and search, they don't get it, and they get the same service they get now. Then let's look at rough sleeping. Andy Burnham came into power 8 years ago with a promise of this is his words, eradicating rough sleeping in 3 years. It's now 8 years. He's spent over £500 million, and the problem is just as bad today as it was 8 years ago. Completely failed. Why has he failed? Because he doesn't want to get his hands dirty. He's relying on the same agencies, the same people to fix rough sleeping that have been dealing with rough sleeping for the last 20, 30 years. Right. So if they could have fixed the problem, they'd have fixed it decades ago. I was going to set up a series of hostels. I was going to enforce that nobody sleeps on the streets in Greater Manchester. And if you don't move, you'll be arrested. But there will be a bed for you. So you take the bed now, or we're going to arrest you. Because people say some people want to sleep on the streets because they're mentally ill. I won't have had any of it. Get them off the streets into a bed. After 1 or 2 nights decent sleep, we then get the social workers and the drug workers working with them in the hostels, because you've got to fix those problems first, those underlying problems. But the number one issue is you've got to get them off the street on day one. Because the longer they're on the streets, the more broken they are. We could have done that with hardly any more money, because we're already spending nearly £1 billion on this with no results. And then the big one for me was, who wants a mayor of Greater Manchester? No one asked for it. Nobody voted for it. And most of the people I speak to don't even want it. They see it as another layer of government, of some of the fat cats getting rich, and then confusing who's responsible. So if I've got a problem, who's responsible? Is it the government? Is it the ministers? Is it the Prime Minister? Is it my MP? Is it the council? Is it my councillor? Is it the mayor? We just keep muddying the water so we don't hold people accountable. So I was going to hold a referendum in Greater Manchester with a simple question. Do you want to keep the position of mayor? And I was going to put myself on the job, on the unemployment, because I would have campaigned to get rid of the position of mayor.
Oh, fantastic! So you effectively make yourself redundant. I love that. That's as a proposition. Now you've also transitioned from, as you say, your charity work to politics with Reform UK. What made you decide to join a party rather than stay independent, and how has that shift changed your approach?
So after the mayor election and general election, I saw that both of them as independent. I realised that I can keep standing as independent as a protest vote. But do the people need a protest vote? Is that just virtue signaling from me? Look at me, look how fantastic I am. I'm not going to get my hands dirty with politics. I'm here for the people. I ain't got a chance in hell of winning, but look at me, I'm fantastic. I'm not in it for that. I'm in for some change. I want change. And if I'm going to get elected, it's obvious I need to be part of a party. Looking at the parties, there's only one party who wants change, and that's Reform UK. Are they perfect? They're far from perfect. But compared to the other parties on offer, they look fairly perfect at the moment. So I joined Reform. I'm not a spokesperson for Reform. I've got no special information on Reform. I'm not even involved in Reform, really. I've joined Reform. I've joined my local branch of Reform. And I'm hoping over the next couple of years I'll be standing for elections for Reform. But there's no guarantee of any of that happening at the moment.
Now, well, polls. Let's talk about Reform, because obviously I think a lot of people know the general stuff. Polls show growing support. You're part of that push. You say you might have a bigger position if you get elected, obviously. What do you think sets Reform apart from the Conservatives and Labour, especially for voters feeling let down by the establishment?
Good question. I mean, you look at the Tories, been in power for 14 years up to last year, achieved nothing. I would say all our problems today sped up under those 14 years. This woke nonsense, this DEI nonsense, all gained traction under the 14 years of Tories. The Tories are not Tories anymore. They're not Conservatives. They conserve nothing. They are, just say it same as Labour, they are now career politicians. It's all about climbing that greasy pole. It's all about short-termism. What can I do today to make me look good in the polls so I'm elected in 2 years' time, or keep my seat in 3 years' time? And the short-termism is killing the country. We're not going to solve any of our problems in a couple of years. It's going to take decades. We need statespeople. And I'd like to think maybe I could become a statesperson where I implementing things that are going to benefit us in 20, 30 years from now. And I don't care who takes the credit 20, 30 years from now. I just know that will improve the country. And both parties now, it's the Uni Party, they're slightly different on a few issues, but basically the same. They follow one from each other. Will Reform be any better? Do you know what? I don't know. It looks like they will be. Even if I was being critical of Reform, the first question is, can they be any worse? Can they be any worse? And the answer is, I don't think they could be any worse. Are they going to be our saviours? Are they the people we're waiting for? I don't know. I tell people all the time, we need to treat political parties like buses. Look at the front of the bus. Is it going where you want to go, the destination? Yes, it is. Get on the bus. Once that bus takes the wrong turn, get off the bus and wait for another bus to come along, because another bus will come along and take you to your destination. So let's stop joining parties thinking I'm going to be with you forever. No, we need to use political parties just like they use us. We use them when they're going where we want to go. Once we don't like where we're going, we dump them, we get off, and we get on another political party bus.
Sound advice. And I always say the people that I love judging the most is those who do things when people are not necessarily looking, in terms of you don't necessarily need to do things for an immediate audience reaction. Do the right thing all of the time. We're going to take a quick break. You're watching the Andrew Eborn Show here. Not touch that dial. Well, welcome back to the Andrew Eborn Show with me, Andrew Eborn, and an extraordinary conversation with my good friend Nick Buckley. We were working about parties are like buses. We've worked about the best researchers in the business fudging those figures. You can tell they've got good jobs in politics is what I love. I want to talk about Nigel Farage. I've been doing this series called The Truth about Nigel Farage. As you may have known, it's hit a lot of media headlines, and I've had all sorts of people on my show saying all sorts of things about Nigel. He's a lightning rod. Love him or hate him, he's certainly been driving reforms momentum. How do you see his leadership style, and what's it like working with him behind the scenes?
I've not worked with him behind the scenes. I've been on his show a couple of times, talking pints, but apart from that, I've never spoken to him. I don't know the man. I only know exactly what other people know through his media appearances.
So just be clear on this. Even though you're in the Reform Party, you don't really work with him, okay?
Yes. All I am at the moment is a member of Reform, just like the 200,000 other people who have joined the party. That's my position at the party.
So what I mean, this is what I'm really interested in, because that's one of the criticisms, because a lot of people say effectively what it is a fan club for Nigel Farage. You pay your membership and that's what you are. If it doesn't, what does it mean to you to be a member?
At this moment in time, it doesn't mean anything. It means I've taken a chance on a bus called Reform UK. I'm hoping it's going to go to the destination I want it to go. And I'm going to talk to the driver. I'm going to speak to the other passengers, and I'm going to try to get that bus to keep going in a direction I want it to go in. And that's what all the members should be doing. When it comes to Nigel Farage, I don't know. The first thing we all probably need to admit is when it comes to politics, he probably knows a hell of a lot more about politics than I do. He obviously wants Reform to be successful. He's got strategy in place. Is it the right strategy? Only time will tell. But we have to look at what are the alternatives at the moment. There are no other alternatives. So we have to put some trust in Nigel Farage and Reform UK until they let us down. This is the advice I've been giving people now since I've been a member for the last 6 weeks, whatever. It's difficult. They've had some bad press at the moment. Some of the members aren't happy with what's gone on with Rupert Lowe and some of the other stuff. But again, if you're waiting for a political party to be perfect, then you're going to be waiting a hell of a long time. And maybe Reform UK won't take us to the promised land. Maybe Reform UK will only take us part of the way. And maybe there's a new political party being created as we speak. Maybe there's new leaders getting into politics now as we speak. And maybe they're the ones who take us the final part of the journey. Maybe Nigel Farage is maybe he's John the Baptist. Maybe he's laying the groundwork for the Messiah to come after him. I don't know. All I know is we've got to do something. And at the moment, Reform UK seem to be the only game in town.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very interesting analogies. I mean, and that's why I say it's important to unpack. And I always, in the interests of balance, make sure that all views are represented. You talk about Nigel being maybe John the Baptist. Others may well call him Judas, because he's betrayed some of the values that they've been looking at, certainly in terms of talking to Rupert Lowe or Ben Habib, who's been on my show several times. We've had the original person who set up the Brexit Party. They paint a very, very different picture of the man. If we look at the headlines about Nigel versus Rupert Lowe, basically his suspension, there's been allegations of bullying, obviously, which Nigel denies. There are leaked WhatsApp messages where apparently he called him, Farage, disgusting. As someone in reform, what's your take on this rift, and can the party move past it?
I think this whole rift has been handled extremely poorly. It all should have been handled in-house. I don't know what's gone on. Like I said, I don't know anything more than anybody else. I don't know what's gone on. And to a certain extent, I don't care what's gone on. I just think this issue has brought the party into disrepute. Rupert Lowe was very popular. It could have been handled so much better behind closed doors, compromise agreement, because it's just damaged everything. There's a sour taste in the air now where I'm speaking to other reform members. The feeling is I had all my hopes in this party, my hopes, my dreams, my aspirations, my children's future, my grandchildren's future. I put all in this vehicle called Reform UK. And now I'm beginning to think they're just like all the other parties. And it's really hit morale. Can Reform get over it? I think they can get over it. Most people in the country have never heard of Rupert Lowe. The members have, and it's hit morale. Has it affected them across the nation? No, it hasn't. Let's jump 5 years ahead. The next election, Reform UK win. Nigel Farage Prime Minister, and he implements big change, and the country starts improving, and we're all getting richer, and our borders are closed, and we're deporting criminals, and crime's falling. Will we forgive Nigel Farage for not being perfect before he became Prime Minister? And the answer would be we would forgive him, because now the country's improving. Will we ever get to that position? I've no idea. So we just need to make sure we're not waiting for someone perfect. Churchill wasn't perfect. Thatcher wasn't perfect. She made loads of mistakes, but she saved the country in the 70s and 80s. Let's stop waiting for a messiah who's perfect, because they're not going to come. We've got to take people, warts and all, and expect mistakes, but forgive them if they then save the country.
Oh, no, I think that's absolutely right. And it is interesting. And that's why it's good. I say I want to make sure all views are represented. I had Martin Jays, another regular on the Andrew Eborn show, and he was telling me he knew Nigel during the EU days, I think 2002, and he talks about, again, a very damning picture. He talks about sex, lies and treachery. And he basically says he wouldn't trust Nigel at all. And is that the man you recognise?
I would say 99.9% of all politicians you've just described there. I expect my politicians to be backstabbers, to be deceitful, to have a high sex drive, to not be trustworthy, to tell that. You've said you're not surprised me with any of that. We have essays written in Rome 2,000 years ago who say their politicians were just like that 2,000 years ago. This is no surprise.
So you're not surprised by those
No.
accusations? Okay, well, there was a very serious accusation as well, because the original founder of the Brexit Party, and there's all sorts of talks about structure and whether it's a limited company and things under trust. But there was a big accusation about a £7 million hole in the finances. What do you know about that?
Absolutely nothing. The structure of the party, that's a really important point. So we know it's been set up as a business, limited company. I'm under the impression, because I've read it online and stuff like that, and things from Reform UK in the press, they're changing that. Is it happening fast enough? Is what they're changing it into going to be good enough? I don't know. But I'll tell you this, unless Reform change to a fully democratic party, where the members have a huge say on who leads, on their policies, on structure, where their books are open for scrutiny, unless we get to that stage, this party will not be successful, because we cannot swap the uni party for a benevolent dictator. Yeah, I've asked to be a democratized party, fully open, run by the members, or it's not. Because if it's not, then it has no place in British politics.
Yeah, and again, that's a very fair point, and that's the criticism a lot of the people who come on the Andrew Eborn show make. They say, actually, it's not really set up. Members don't have any rights at all. They are basically a subscription club, a fan club, if you like, for Nigel.
It is, but I think we need to give some time.
It is. You agree with that assessment?
Well, that's how it seems at the moment.
Okay.
That's how it seems at the moment. But Reform keeps saying we're changing. We've got solicitors involved. We're speaking to the Electoral Commission. That's what they're saying now. That all might be true. So I think a year from now, if we're still having these conversations, then I think that might be damning. But we can appreciate how long, solicitors take to do things. The Electoral Commission, doesn't.
Well, my background is as a lawyer, so I don't take long at all. The secret is not complete.
But that's their number one crux. They've got to fix that. They've got to be a fully democratic party. They have to be.
But that's the bombshell admission, if you like, is that it is effectively a fan club for Nigel at the moment. Is not set up where members have any rights or any say. We're going to take another quick break. When we come back, more bombshell revelations from Nick Buckley. You're watching the Andrew Eborn Show here on The Pulse today. Do not touch that dial. Well, welcome back to the Andrew Eborn Show with me, Andrew Eborn, and Nick Buckley, telling us that the Reform is basically at the moment just a fan club for Nigel Farage. One of the central issues and one of the big things that they've fallen out on, Rupert Lowe and Nigel Farage, is about policy. So let's have a look at some of those policies, and in particular about what to do with people who are here illegally. Basically, Rupert has got a very firm stance. He's got a sort of Trump stance, is that if you're here illegally, mass deportation, you're out of it. Where do you stand?
I completely agree. Mass deportations. It's as simple as that.
And Nigel's wrong then, is he?
Is he wrong, or is he playing politics? Is he going down the middle road because he wants to attract middle of the road voters, knowing he's got the other voters in the party? I don't know. But mass deportations of people here illegally and foreign criminals is, for me, step one. It isn't negotiable. It's step one. We have to have that. Now, is it difficult to do? Well, it might be difficult to do, but just because something is difficult to do doesn't mean we don't try to do it. Curing cancer is difficult. We're spending billions trying to do it, though, aren't we? So just because it's difficult, it doesn't mean it can't be done. I mean, the members I'm speaking to want mass deportation and deportation of foreign criminals. It's the starting block for the new way we want government to run. And I don't think Nigel Farage wants to be pulled into these discussions. I'm sure he sees the sense of it, and I'd be surprised if he didn't want it to happen.
Okay. Well, the other divisive figure in terms of maybe Rupert Lowe and Nigel Farage is Tommy Robinson. Where do you stand on Tommy?
I have no opinion one way or the other on Tommy Robinson. He's a flawed individual, and he'll probably admit he's a flawed individual. He's made lots of mistakes, but he's also done some good work as well, highlighting the grooming gang scandal, keeping that in the news, highlighting some of the failings there. So he, just like most people, there's a good side and there's a bad side to him. Should he be part of Reform UK? Well, that's not a decision for me to make. But the party clearly states that people who are members of the EDL can't join. That was the same policy in the Brexit Party and in UKIP. I think this is a distraction. I think Tommy Robinson is a distraction. He's very popular in certain sectors of the community. I just don't understand why Reform keep wanting this fight, keep wanting to discuss Tommy Robinson. It shouldn't be a discussion. It should be, well, Tommy Robinson, well, we haven't got an opinion on Tommy Robinson because he's not allowed to join the party because of our
and it's interesting. And I've had guests on the Andrew Eborn show talking about Tommy and saying but he's not going to be allowed to be joining the party. With those who say he shouldn't join the party, a lot of his supporters, they turn around and say Tommy's never asked to join the party, so why is it even being discussed?
It's a non-issue. I don't know why Reform keep falling into this trap. And I'm sure this trap is being laid by the opposition to Reform UK, the Tories and Labour. They want this discussion because, first of all, it connects Reform UK with Tommy Robinson, even though he doesn't want to join and he wouldn't be able to join. But it also annoys Reform UK supporters that they're keeping someone like him out of the party. Reform UK should go out of their way not to discuss Tommy Robinson, and when they have to, just close the conversation down with, well, he's not allowed to join. So until members change the policy, there's no discussion to have here.
Okay. And just on Tommy then, as I say, he doesn't, as far as I know, want to join the party. What I do know from the reports that I've heard is that he's being kept in appalling conditions in solitary confinement. So whatever people's views are about what he may not or done in the past, or his views about certain things, the conditions that he's kept in sound inhumane. What's your views on that?
Tommy Robinson is a political prisoner. He's been persecuted by the state for decades and decades. That's fact. If Tommy Robinson had an accent like you, he probably wouldn't be in jail today. He would have had a different ride over the last 2 decades. Tommy Robinson suffers from classism because he's a working class lad with a working class accent. He is the boogeyman the left and the mainstream media always needs. He's been a boogeyman now for 15, 20 years, something like that. He's the person the elite point to and go, we need to be careful of people like him. His views, I don't know any views he's got that are different from Douglas Murray. But Douglas Murray speaks with a plum in his mouth and therefore is allowed to say the things he says. Tommy Robinson's persecuted because he comes from the working class. He shouldn't be in jail and he shouldn't be in isolation. I'm not for one moment saying Tommy Robinson's an angel. He's not an angel. You know, he's got convictions for football hooliganism, for fraudulent use of a passport. There's things he's done wrong. He's made lots of mistakes in his life, and that's fine. But he's being persecuted because the elite always need a bogeyman. And when you class him as far right and a Nazi and the this and the that, he's useful for the establishment to point to. And he's been treated very unfairly.
Now, Errol Musk, Elon's father, is on the Andrew Eborn show all of the time. And I talked to him about his views and also Elon's views about Tommy. They do view him, basically, they say, what Errol says, he's the new Nelson Mandela. And he thinks one day he could very well be prime minister. Do you think that's realistic?
I can't see that happening. But do you know what? Lots of things I can't see happening actually then come true. He has been persecuted. And is he Nelson Mandela? Well, do you know what? Nelson Mandela was spent 27 years in jail for being a terrorist, for blowing stuff up, for being a member of an illegal political party that was killing people. So that was Nelson Mandela. You look at people like Dr. Martin Luther King, wasn't the saint we think he is, an adulterer, a sex addict, allegedly in a room where rape was being committed. So we don't heroes are never perfect. We overlook their flaws because of one or two things that are amazing that they do. And maybe Tommy Robinson will be looked differently in time. I don't know.
You say heroes are different. Are you calling Tommy Robinson a hero?
I have no idea. I think that's only judged with time in history. You look back and you say he was a hero. Look what he did. I have no idea how history will judge Tommy Robinson.
I mentioned Errol Musk and Elon Musk, as I say. Errol's a regular on the Andrew Eborn show. We talked about the apparent 100 million donation. Elon, as far as I'm aware, has never actually confirmed the figure or that sort of side. What he has made clear, however, is he doesn't think Nigel's a fit leader and he prefers Rupert Lowe. What's your take on that?
This sounds like where all the issues began between Rupert Lowe and Reform UK. That's my opinion. I don't know anything more about it. That's not in the press. But I would imagine politicians have egos, leaders of parties have egos and want to remain leaders of their party. Everybody wants to wear the crown. We just look throughout the history of kings, emperors, and tribes. There's always someone wanting your place. And many.
That was one of the suggestions. Actually, you're right, Nick. Is sort of turning around on that sort of basis. The suggestion is that Nigel's ego was dented by the popularity of Rupert, and that's one of the fundamental problems. Is that your view?
Again, I don't know. I don't think Nigel's ego was dented because Rupert Lowe was popular on Twitter. Most people in the country have never heard of Rupert Lowe. It may have been he was seen as a potential threat. That may have just. I'm speculating. I've absolutely no idea.
Okay. I won't push you if you're speculating. I had Anne Widdecombe on the show, and she says, "Well, if I don't know the answer to something, I won't try and guess it." So I like, and she's peddling common sense as well, because we all know common sense ain't that common. I want to finish on just because there's so many policies, and we will get you back, and it's so refreshing to have your honesty. But teachers' unions are clashing with reform over claims that they're telling the kids that the party's far right and racist. Nigel's vowed to go to war with them. How do you see this playing out, and what's the risk for reform's image?
I can't see any risk to reform's image because we're crying out for someone to do this. The next leader we needs to be a Thatcher 2.0. We need to take on the unions again, not for the reasons she took on the unions, but for different reasons now. And the teachers' union is a good example of this. They need to be destroyed. Teachers' unions are there to represent their members in their workplace. They're not there to discuss policy, education policy, about what should be teaching, what shouldn't be teaching, how teachers feel. I don't care. That's not their job. The teachers' union needs hammering. And if Farage and Reform UK are willing to do that, they've got my blessing and help and support.
Okay. Nick Buckley, it has been a refreshingly honest discussion, as always. How can people find you?
I'm all over social media, especially YouTube and Twitter, and my handles the same, at Nick Buckley MBE.
There you go. Fantastic. And we've got those wonderful initials as well. Oh, I should ask you then, because Charlie Mullins, who was on the show talking about the threat to take away his OBE because he wasn't a good boy. Give me 10 seconds on that.
I get that all the time, right? Every week I get a message off somebody online going, I just reported you to the honours system and they're going to take your award off you. I've never had anything official from the awards committee about how I need to keep my mouth shut. And I'm not keeping my mouth shut.
It was scandalous. We'll continue to unpack that as well. Fortunately, that's now been sorted. For now, Nick Buckley, thank you very much for joining me. I will be back with the rest of you, same time, same place tomorrow, right here on the Andrew Eborn Show.